The tip is good. Ready?
Ready. This is Tyrone Gethers Jr., your host of The Sources Inkwell, live on KUAW, Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom. You can check out this broadcast in a number of ways. You can hit us up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, Periscope, Twitch, TuneIn, I did say YouTube. And just type in KUAW Radio and we'll pop right up. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can hit us up at 816-599-6893, and we can take your call right here on the spot live on the air, or you can leave us a message or a donation. We are a 501c3. We take donations. Right, so, yeah, it's true. So we're saying that it's good to be back in the Inkwell. I've been in and out for a while, but been more out than in due to transitions with work or whatnot. So, which kind of sets up the premise of my broadcast today. I've been in education for 22, 23 years, and you know how they say, excuse me, there's nothing new under the sun? Well, the same goes for education as well. And I got my start at Westport Middle School back when it was a charter school. And one thing I can say is that was a very, very culturally sound staff. I mean, you had a staff that actually reflected the population of the students, and staff that did not reflect the population of the students still cared for those kids as if they were theirs. So whenever we had celebrations for our students, everyone came together, whether it was historical, a birthday, a life, a death, whatever it was, that core group of teachers, that staff was always there, and they kind of set the premise of my pedagogy. So later on down the line, after Westport Charter closed, Westport Middle ended up closing as well too, I transitioned to other areas of education, and I've noticed that I was going to predominantly black schools, or predominant schools of color. However, the staff was not reflective of the population. And when you have an issue with representation, you start seeing educational neglect. There is a quote that I used to always say, that if a child is not seen in that family photo of your classroom, then they will act in a manner to let you know that they've been missed, or that they've been left out. And we see that a lot now with our schools. Since the pandemic, we've had a large influx of teachers leaving. I remember they said over 40% of the teaching staff in the United States around the pandemic either left the district or filed for early retirement. And since then, you kind of seen a decline and a very, very, very slow resurgence of the population of teachers. However, you don't see many teachers of color, primarily African Americans, definitely African American males. And we're saying that representation does matter. And when you have a classroom full of African American students and all of their teachers do not look like them, then there are some connection issues. So one issue that I took upon myself once I started teaching is the quote that I said earlier to you all. I took that to heart. And I made sure that every student in my classroom, they were seen, not just as a student, but they were seen as an individual. They were seen culturally. They were seen based on their religion. They were seen, they were celebrated, and they knew that they were loved with every aspect of them. Another teaching phrase is good teachers teach kids holistically. It's not just the lesson, but holistically, and the kids have that in my classroom. And I actually extended that beyond the classroom to the building as a whole. So every month I will do something to celebrate all of my students. I'm going to fast forward, and outside of my job in the classroom, in my school, I'm also an advocate for I mentor other teachers too. And I have like a a little revolutionary piece that I do with schools as well. So I'm in a lot of schools all across the area, the greater Kansas City area. And since I would say as of recent, I've been through several schools and I've noticed something. February is seen as Black History Month. A lot of the schools I've been in, there's not a strong celebration of Black History Month. And in those buildings, the majority of your students are black. But of course, you're going to say, well, what if it's a school you've been in and it's not that many black? It doesn't matter. If you got one black, it's clear. If you have none, it still needs to be celebrated. So I was in a few meetings and I made some observations that I want to share with you all today. And what I'm going to share with you, it made me disgusted with what I saw and what I've heard. In one particular building, you saw every other, you saw nationalities talked about. I mean, you saw Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American Month, which is good. You even saw certain religious aspects celebrated. But as soon as Black History Month came, that bulletin board was blank. Nothing was said. One of my mentees said, Mr. Gethers, we've done nothing in this school. There's been no push. I went to another school. One of the teachers asked their administrator, hey, do we do Black History Month here? And the principal said, oh, we don't do that here. We don't do that here. That was the response they got from their principal. We don't do that here. Another school, they said, excuse me, we're waiting to do something with Black History Month because of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They said because they said no DEI, they're not going to do Black History Month in their school building. That floored me. And then on the other side of the coin, the schools that were doing something with Black History Month was either waiting extremely later into the month of February, because February is a short month, or some of the content that they was doing was not appropriate. For example, in one particular school, a question was asked for students to sing a particular song. And I'm not going to say what that song was, but it was a Negro spiritual. Can we have some students sing this Negro spiritual? Whoa. Wow. Another school building. The principal was like, hey, I have a Black History celebration going on. And during that Black History celebration, you saw some of the raunchiest rap music that was played. Now, of course, rap music I have no problem with, okay? However, when you're saying that Black history is people on stage popping and twerking and appealing to the nigga senses, yeah, I said that. That's an issue. And that's the thing that I just don't like with what I'm seeing with a lot of these school systems, is that they don't appeal to the power in our culture. They appeal to the subjugation, telling students that, hey, you came from slavery. And slavery is not where we came from in this country. Slavery only interrupted our history. That is not where we came from. Our history is since the beginning of time. And then they tell these students that, hey, your history, or right now, your culture is this popping, this twerking, this nigga this nigga that. Kill, 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 B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H. That's not our culture. That's not us. Remember, my father sat me down and told me, he said, who owns the majority of these rap labels? And I started naming all these names. He said, no, they don't. He said, a lot of the rap labels that are owned, they're owned by old white men who have no connection to the community, and they put plants, we call them industry plants now, in front of the masses to make you think that that's really going on. So the majority of the people that you see on these videos and here on these radio stations don't live the life that they are. So now you got these schools telling these kids, this is you. Now, I was always told, meet someone where they are, but you got to bring them up. Schools, you are meeting kids where they are, and you're bringing them down. And that's a definite issue. Now, there's no problem with a kid wanting to be an athlete or wanting to be a musician or a rapper, but they can do so much more than that. I always tell kids you can do both. You can do more than one thing in life. You don't want to be typecasted in one thing. I mean, there are some NFL players that have master's degrees, that have high-level degrees. I mean, I think one of them's a medical doctor. I've heard a few of them. There's some NBA players that actually finished and got their degrees, and when they got done, they're able to play, do something else besides play ball. There are educated rappers out there, and contrary to popular belief, Megan Thee Stallion, very intelligent. Take away some of the stuff she's saying. When you actually sit and do your research on her, she is very bright. So my issue is, I think that when you have schools where the representation doesn't matter, and you have a predominantly white staff or whatnot, you start seeing this huge disconnect, this huge I'm going to teach what I think black history is. I mean, there's more to us than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, he's done so much for us. He has. Harriet Tubman has done so much. George Washington Carver has done so much. But there are so many more individuals in our history that you can draw from. But see, like I told some students one time, I said, those are all the safe choices. Because if you read a lot of that stuff, or if you see the curricula for a lot of that, it's written, although it's like, yeah, this is what they've done, it's not written in a manner that it should have been written. It's not taught in a manner in which it should be taught. So I say all this to say that we have an issue in our community. Black folk got to teach black folk our history. But that's the caveat, though. That's the caveat. Another issue is I'm actually seeing black folk in these schools that are accomplices to that oppressive mindset of either erasing black history or watering down or altering black history. I sat one time in a room of educators, and most of them were black, and they were like, well, I haven't thought about doing anything for Black History Month. Whoa, you are a black teacher in a predominantly black school, and you don't want to do anything about that? You don't see anything? You don't want to focus on anything? In another school setting, you're the only black teacher in your building. You can still do something. Now, there are some teachers that I've seen every day, they're wearing something Afrocentric or something pro-black, to the point to where the kids are asking questions about what they're wearing. And then they're actually answering those questions for those kids and educating them. I had a student one time. You know how kids wear the t-shirts, and on those t-shirts they have a musician or an album cover. I saw a video about this on Facebook, and it was really silly. But like they asked the kid, hey, who's it on your shirt? I don't know. Well, that's Jimi Hendrix. Name one Jimi Hendrix song. I don't know. So anyway, fast forward. I had a student, she was wearing a Malcolm X shirt. And I hope y'all sitting down for this. I'm going to give you time to sit down. Okay. Might want to lean back a little bit because you might pass out. Go ahead, lean back. Ma'am, lean back. Okay. Get comfortable. Because I'm about to make you uncomfortable. I said, who's that on your shirt? The student said, I don't know. I said, you don't know who that is? She said, no. I said, you don't know who said by any means necessary? No. I said, that's Malcolm X. And then she said, who's that? never heard of Malcolm X, and she's in the 8th grade, or she was in the 8th grade, and never heard of Malcolm X. Now at this point, okay, go ahead and wake the person up next to you that passed out. At this point, you ask yourself, who's to blame? Is it the school system for not teaching it? The parents for not introducing it? Or the community for not embracing it? Or the student for refusing to learn it at that time? Everybody's at blame for this, even present company included. So I told the student, I educated her on who Malcolm was, and we had a nice little talk about some things. And then from that day on, well, throughout February, and also beyond February, she would come to me and say, hey, Mr. Gethers, I learned this about this person. Did you know about this person? And there were some items I did know about, and there were some that I did not, which goes to what I've been teaching, is that education is a dual road. We learn from our students, too, as they learn from us, as they teach us, as we teach them. And I said, okay, now go educate your peers. And she was actually educating her peers on Black history. And I loved it. It was awesome. I was blown away with what she was doing. Also, what kind of got to me was we had a situation one time in the school. And I'll go ahead and admit this. This happened to me. And this is for all my white teachers out there and teachers who are not of African descent. We had, excuse me, an activity in school. And I got this a lot in a couple schools. And we were all talking about it as a staff. And they were like, so who's going to lead the Black History activity? Or the Black History this? And one lady, and I've heard this, she told me, said it right to my face. Mr. Gethers, I feel you should do it. And in my mind, you already knew what I was thinking. I said, well, why do you think I should do that? She said, because you're Black and you should do it. And I looked at her, I said, man, where is it written that only Black people teach Black history? I'm like, aren't you a history teacher as well too? Shouldn't you be teaching this in your classroom? Do you teach this in your classroom? And of course she got quiet. But the whole perception, the idiotic perception that only Black people can teach Black history, that's an issue too. And also, I've actually had white coworkers tell me, hey, Mr. Gethers, I was wearing a Black history t-shirt, and my peers, my white peers, came to me and said, hey, why are you wearing that? This ain't your month, it's their month. I mean, now, at first I'm like, man, that's messed up. So then I said, well, who said this? Well, I don't want to say. You don't want to say? Okay, well then you know what? You're just as bad as them. Because it can be corrected. Just like I had a teacher tell me, she said, hey, yes, there are teachers in the school building that are my friends, and they've said some racist stuff. I've heard them. And I said, what'd you do about it? Well, I just listened, I just let them say what they said. That made you worse than them. Anytime you see a sin being committed and you don't do anything about it, you're just as bad as a sinner, if not worse. And that's the issue. We have individuals who have this jacked up mindset that they can't touch certain things because they feel it's not them. Another issue, we're sitting in these schools and and this isn't just Black History Month. I feel that February is the start of Black History Year. Our history is year round, just like everybody else's history is year round. There were some students who was calling each other all kind of niggas left and right. And I saw their teacher, who was a white male. He just looked at him and let it go. And I said, hey, man, so I pulled him aside and I said, you didn't feel you can correct that? Well, nah, why would I? Why would you? And these are people that are teaching your kids. And that's an issue. Just like I saw those blank bulletin boards in February, I'm seeing those blank ideologies when it comes to teaching students of color. But in my household, I feel it's my responsibility to teach my son about his culture. It is. It starts at home with me. And my son came home a couple times and told me about a few things. He came home and told me about Hannibal. My son's 9, just turned 9. And he told me about Hannibal, and he broke it down and did a real good job. And I asked him, I said, where did your teacher say Hannibal was from? And of course, he didn't know. So, of course, Daddy had to educate him on the holes that his teacher left out. Now, do I think it was by design? Unconsciously, yes. Definitely. Because when I was in school, they failed to say where Carthage was. So, I'm going to go to my notes here. And I'm going to just discuss a few things. That the perception of black history isn't taught in school often due to a combination of factors. And we're going to talk about these combinations of factors. Because, first of all, Black History Month, out of all the months, have you noticed, if you compare Black history to Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American Month, Women's History, all the other months, there's a lack of comprehensive curricula. It is. It's also very limited too. Like I said earlier, they only talk about Dr. King or Harriet Tubman or George Washington Carver, Garrett Morris. This is very, very limited. Or they talk about slavery, or they show you, this is where you came from. No. So the focus on slavery as a starting point for black history, that's a huge issue, because that is not the start. Just like I wrote in a note to my students, and it's also a meme too, that they didn't steal slaves from Africa. No, they took kings, queens, mothers, fathers, doctors, lawyers, philosophers, thinkers, warriors. That's what they did. That's who they took. Now, of course, there has been recent legislative things. If you notice this too, out of all the curricula, Black History Month has the restrictions on how it should be taught. And we all know why that is. That's done so it doesn't make our counterparts feel guilty about things. I remember someone said, I didn't own no slaves, so why are you mad at me? I said, first of all, I'm not mad at you, but you just made a stupid comment. Yeah, you may not have owned slaves, but you benefited from someone that owned slaves. And that's what you fail to comprehend. Your privilege was passed on. Now, on an important note, many schools try to incorporate black history into their curricula. However, the depth and the coverage depends on where you go. Like I said earlier, you got the surface. Yeah, we're only going to talk about slavery and Dr. King. Or you have depth. We're going to talk about Kemet. We're going to talk about Hannibal and the Carthaginians. We're going to talk about how one of the names for Africa was Ethiopia. We're going to discuss how the ancient Greeks took their philosophies and their religion from the ancient Egyptians. Or we're going to discuss how Mansa Musa was the richest man of all time. Or, they're not going to discuss that. They don't want the kids to see, okay, you came from richness. They don't want you to see that. So the coverage varies on significance. You have some teachers that care, some who don't. Some of it's personal, some of it's based on where they work. Now here's some key points. Now, there's a historical basis here. Historical basis is the curricula often starts with the enslavement of Africans. That's not where our history starts. Our history is beyond that. Millennia and millennia beyond that. Prominent figures like Dr. King, Rosa Parks, it's being told, but not through our lens. I remember when I started hearing things about Dr. King when I was older, I'm like, they didn't teach that in school. Wow, this dude was more of a revolutionary than what they thought. Than what they told me. Rosa Parks. Wow, Rosa Parks wasn't the only one that didn't sit down on the bus. It was someone else. So Harriet Tubman. Harriet was cold-blooded. They don't tell you about that. They just tell you about the surface areas that is controlled by the masses. Now, they neglect the diverse contributions of black people across various fields. Now, first of all, let's be real here. From a historical sense, there's evidence of African people all over the world. Case in point, the Grand Canyon has Egyptian hieroglyphics in it. The American government knows about that. You know why? Because they blew those caves up and caved them in so nobody would see them. Also, for 800 years, you had Africans living in the Iberian Peninsula, which is, hey, Mr. Walker, it's frozen. It's still recording though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, in the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian Peninsula is Spain and Portugal. For 800 years, you had Spanish kings beneath sultans. And these sultans basically brought Spain culture. They brought them cleanliness. They brought them agriculture. They brought them architecture. They brought them religion. They brought them defense. Defense. And it went all throughout Europe. For example, when I lived in Spain, Sevilla, Spain, and the Plaza is one of the crown jewels of Kansas City, Missouri. J.C. Nichols was one of the most racist individuals that ever stepped foot in Kansas City, Missouri. And the Plaza, to this day, is still like that. If you look at the Plaza is the sister city of Sevilla, Spain, where I lived. And a lot of the areas that you see is reminiscent. For example, that tower on the Cheesecake Factory, La Herrada, that is an actual tower in Spain. Every hour, a guy would ride a mule up the ramps and ring the bell. That was how it was back then. The fountain where you got the four heads, that's in Spain. Those geometric shapes, that's Moorish shapes. That's Moorish artwork. So the fact that he did this, the Plaza really is a contribution to Afrocentric art. He didn't know that. See, because racist people are stupid. So when you go down to the Plaza, make sure you look around and see some of those geometric shapes and see that artwork. And Spain embraces this too. Also, historically speaking, we talk about slavery. Christopher Columbus was one of the world's first slave traders. I actually saw, and this is one thing they don't teach you in school, I actually saw where Christopher Columbus stashed all of the stolen gold. Those of us who live in Kansas City, Missouri, raise your hand. Brush Creek. There was a river. I forgot the name of it, but it's a river about that size that runs through Sevilla, Spain. And those of us who don't live in Kansas City, the river walk down to Houston, Texas, it's about that wide. So imagine this huge ship sailing down and it stops. And there was this tower. It was called the La Torre de Oro, Tower of Gold, if I'm saying that right in Spanish. And Columbus would stash all of his gold in that tower. First of all, Columbus wasn't the man's name. His name was Giovanni Griego. That was one of his names. And he wasn't even Spanish. I think he was Italian. And he got the name because he was in a shipwreck, and he ended up with one of the only survivors. And he said, because I was survived, I'm going to change my name to Cristobal Colon. That means the bearer of Christ. And ironically, one of the first slave ships was called the slave ship Jesus. Yes, religion is one of the methods in which people were duped into slavery, duped into oppression. So I say all this to say that Columbus, because he was doing all of this slavery, if you go to Spain, Sevilla, Spain right now, and mention that man's name, you will get hushed. They do not talk about that man. They hate him more than we do. Well, hate's a strong word. They disown him as much as we do. As a matter of fact, I saw one of Columbus's rumored grave sites, and I was as close as I am to these lights. That's how close I was to this man's grave, or to his tomb. And I asked our guide, I said, is that where he is? He said, well, it's one of the rumored spots, but we don't know. He says, as a matter of fact, Columbus has relatives here in Sevilla right now, but we're not going to do any. The government's not going to do any DNA exhuming or anything like that. We don't care. So he's rumored to be in other spots in the Caribbean also too. But I say all that to say that it's funny that other outside nations know about the ugliness of this racism, but in the United States we still celebrate this crap. So historically, as I went in depth about that and other things, we're not going in depth about that. We're very, very surface for control. Also, there's a limited focus on achievements. Look, many narratives are brought out that only highlight a few prominent figures. And I did say those few prominent figures, like Dr. King or Rosa. And if you notice, if their achievements are discussed, the achievements that are discussed are the ones that benefit whites instead of blacks. Think about that. Think about all the black history figures that you learned when you were in school, and think about the achievements that was brought up. Is this achievement good for all of us or just for you? Think about it. It's like a relationship. People are individuals in their relationships. I love you for you and for what you do and for where you came from. Not I love you for what you do for me and how you make me look. That's how black history is in these schools. Well, I'm going to teach it to make me look a certain way. And that's what's being seen. That's the narrative that's being thrown out. Because you are neglecting the diverse contributions of blacks around the world, of Africans around the world. I said it earlier. I remember watching Mr. Walker's over here, and he sometimes when he gets these posters of these movies, he posts them up on the board, right? He's also a comic book fan when it comes to the movies too. There's two comic book characters I'm gonna talk about, but one is historical. One, remember the Thor movie? Idris Elba played Heimdall. Heimdall was the all-seeing, all-hearing Norse god. So if you look at Thor, and if you read the mythology, Heimdall can see across all the 9 realms. So if you're, I don't know, riding your bike in Sweden, and Heimdall was in Asgard, he can not only see you, but he can also hear what you're saying. That's how bad he is. And if you look at the hierarchy of the Norse gods, Heimdall is near the top of the food chain. And in the Thor movie, it is, if you blink, you'll miss it. There's a scene where Loki is talking to Heimdall about how powerful he truly is. And he says, but you just sit here and you just guard? And he said, I serve my king. So what Loki was saying was, you're so powerful, you could probably defeat my dad. You can actually defeat Odin. But Heimdall digressed. However, when that movie first came out, white folks were pissed that this black man played this powerful god. And you heard everything from that black man or this, you know what, can't play this god. This is horrible. There's no such thing as a black god. But wait, there is. If you look at Greek mythology, they say that this world was civilized 10,000 years ago. And the individuals that civilized the world was the ancient Greeks. We all know that's BS because the ancient Greeks got it from somewhere else. But anyway, what I'm saying is there was a particular god who is one of the 12 major gods. And if you go to the Cheesecake Factory, you will see a statue in the middle of the Cheesecake Factory while you're waiting to get in there to eat your food. His Roman name is Bacchus, but his Greek name is Dionysus. Now Dionysus also has parallels to Jesus Christ, wearing purple, being god of the vine, making wine, and turning into a lion, and also being of African descent. So a lot of Dionysus came from Jesus Christ, a lot of parallels. So we're saying that Dionysus' mother was Ethiopian. If you read the original text, you see Zeus fell in love with an Ethiopian woman. And we all know that back then, one of the names for Africa was Ethiopia. So he marries this African woman. Oh, I'm sorry, not married. He sleeps with her, gets her pregnant, And then Hera gets jealous because Zeus had another woman, and she says, if he really loves you, make him swear to give you whatever you want. She does that. Zeus says, baby, you can have whatever you want. She said, I want to see you for who you really are, because Hera tricked her and said, if you see who you really are, if he really loves you, he'll show you who he really is. So Zeus, because she bound by sticks to say that, Zeus showed her who he really was. He showed his full glory, and she dies. But Zeus looks down, sees this baby. He opens up his thigh, and Dionysus was nursed in his thigh. Fast forward. Dionysus, like I said, was on a ship, and he wore purple. He tended to the vine. He was the party god. He was the life of the party. Everyone loved him. He was also a decent warrior too, because his death, depending on where you read, he meets his half brother Perseus, the guy that killed Medusa, and the two of them got into a fight and they end up mortally wounding each other. And when Dionysus died, he told Zeus, hey, I want to be one of the 12 major gods. So during that time, there was 12 gods, and I think Hestia, she said, you know what, I'll go stand by the hearth and tend to the fire of Olympus. He can have my spot. So Zeus and all the guys voted, and they said, yes, we want Dionysus in. And I'm telling y'all, this is true. I read this, and it said, as soon as Dionysus got the say-so, they said, Olympus heard these drums playing. And when these drums was playing, these women came in dancing, because the women followed Dionysus. And they danced him in. And as they were dancing, the satyrs came in also, because, you know, the little half-goat dudes. And you heard all this music. And then they said, you smell this aroma. And then Dionysus came in, and they described him as having hair of wool and dark skin. And he sat down and took his place on Olympus as a god. So yes, the ancient Greeks worshipped a black man. One of the 12 major gods of ancient Greece was black. And if you actually really dig in it deeper, you will see that Apollo had bronze skin. If you read those texts, he had dark skin as well too, being the son of, being sun god. Helios, the titan of the sun, well, the sun himself, the titan, was seen as black. So you have all these black people. Hercules, he got into a fight and he almost died. The individual that almost killed him was a son of Gaia, who almost destroyed Hercules. He was in northern Africa. Atlas, he's named after Mount Atlas. If you go to Mount Atlas in Africa, that mountain is Atlas, after he saw Medusa's head and turned into an actual statue, a mountain. Mount Atlas, the Titan Atlas, is there. In Liberia, Pallas, one of Athena's names is Pallas Athena. The name Pallas came from a Titan who was from Africa, who almost bested Athena in battle. And to this day, if you go to that country, there are celebrations that celebrate Athena and Pallas fighting each other, and Athena killing Pallas. Athena loved Pallas so much and was so regretful for killing her. Her true name is Pallas Athena. So all of this is to let you know that Africans were across the globe. Look at Native American culture. We need to stop saying, black folks, oh, I got Indian in me, or I got Native American in me. No, it's the other way around. They have us in them. If you look at the Hopi tribe and the Hopi tribe, they're the same. If you look at how Native Americans bury each other, mound burial came from Africa. If you look at an Egyptian pyramid, yes, you see the monument, but where's that pharaoh or that queen or that person of elegance buried? In a mound. There was no such thing as email or internet back then. Africans made the map, the Piraeus map. If you look at that map charts all over the world. The oldest ship is in Crete, and it's rooted back to Africa. So, I mean, I can keep going on and on about that. I know I went off on a rabbit trail, but that's the issue. The limited focus on achievement. Our achievements go beyond the civil rights movement. Beyond. Now, no, I'm not saying that because I'm like, oh man, nah, the that don't matter. It does matter, but when you talk about the civil rights movement, talk about the civil rights movement, and also black teachers. I want you to go to your black student and tell them who was one of the strongest influential groups during the civil rights movement. Students. Students were. SNCC was cold blooded. They were the ones that was doing those sit-ins. And really, I think if I got this right, Dr. King, Mr. Walker, I remember Dr. King and the SCLC telling SNCC, y'all shouldn't go down there to the South and do those sit-ins because it was dangerous. SNCC said, we still doing it. And they took little white kids with them and sat down there, and they got this, beat up and spit on and cussed out and called names. They did what King and them wouldn't do. The youth. One of the founding members of the Black Panther Party, little Bobby, was a youth, a kid. The youth movement really was strong in civil rights era. Little Rock Nine. My Aunt Reba, may she rest in peace, her husband, my Uncle Horace, he grew up in the house. When I went to his family home and talked to his mama, they said, look down there at that house. I saw the house where the Little Rock Nine assembled. Ruby Bridges, still alive today. The youth did this. The youth. So think about that. You go into a room of high school kids, middle school kids, heck, elementary school kids, and let them know what their presence was, what their dominance was during that time period. I guarantee you have every eye glued on you. Let them know that, hey, your age group made a difference. And it still is making a difference. You know, I say this. The oppressor knows what they're doing. They're attacking our children. They're telling our children, hey, look, this is you. This is you. The raunchiness, the disrespect, the cussing. That's you. But you don't tell them, okay, this is you. Sitting down in those seats, standing up for what's right, taking a beating so your brother or your sister wouldn't have to. And then on the other side of the coin, too. I mean, look at those Panthers. Hey, going into your community, taking over your community, protecting your community, uniting your community, letting individuals know you can't bring that stuff in here. There was a fear. Let's put it like this. Racist white folks feared organized and educated blacks so much, they founded the FBI. The FBI was founded to jam up organized, intellectual black folks. Am I right, Mr. Walker? Shoot. Hey, look it up. Look it up. So when you have these students who are unaware of their true worth, it makes their minds able to be manipulated. Then I heard this has been going on a lot too, the whole DEI and critical race theory concerns. Look, you know you're doing the right thing when they're making what you're doing wrong. There's legislation out there in certain states that restrict teaching about race and systematic racism, which leads to concerns that teachers avoid certain discussions because there are certain aspects of black history that they, if they teach it, there's backlash. Who was that? What was that man's name? One of the most profound surgeons, was it Ben Carson? Yeah, who said that they weren't slaves, they were indentured servants. Yeah. I remember my daddy made me sit there and watch that man's read his book and his and listen to the documentary Think Big. Ben Carson, Trump supporter. Yeah. I sat there and said, and when I got older, I said, wow. I was listening to this clown. So yeah, indentured servants. Yeah. Okay. For life. For life. Curriculum constraints. There are definite time limitations. Someone asked me, said, Mr. Geller, how do you do it? Well, I don't pick just 1 month to teach about anyone's culture. I implement it daily throughout everything. It's easy to do. Just find out how your kids connect to it. So when you sit up here and you try to pigeonhole something in 1 month or 1 week or 1 day, then yeah, it's going to be time constraints. Because it's superficial if you sit up here and you say, well, I'm only going to talk about this for 1 week or 1 day. Because the coverage of anybody's history goes beyond one particular month. Black history goes beyond the shortest month of the year. Beyond. We go beyond that. Matter of fact, we go beyond this earth. We go up to the stars too. Got another one for you. Y'all sitting up here talking about these zodiac signs and all that, and touting out all this Greek stuff, which is, that's your prerogative. However, there were individuals that charted the celestial bodies way before the ancient Greeks did. Matter of fact, the Doban tribe did that. And let's go a little connection here. Benjamin Banneker was a descendant of the Doban tribe, and that's proof of that. If you look at a map of Washington, D.C. from an aerial view, it connects to the celestial bodies. He designed Washington, D.C. Do your research. Shout out to Mr. Banks, who now lives in Ghana. I miss that dude, man. That brother, man, he really hit me to a lot. And one thing I will say is when I talked with Mr. Banks, he and I got in trouble with some of the things that we were teaching because we were teaching the truth to our students. Okay, also teacher training and awareness, which goes back to what I was talking about, Mr. Banks. There were a lot of things that I did not know, and I actually went out and spoke to individuals about our history. And I don't know everything about our history. I get it from my parents. I get it from mentors like Mr. Banks, my significant other. I get it from family members, elders, sitting down. I mean, one of the greatest resources is sitting down in front of one of your elders and learning about your history. Mr. Leon Dixon, I remember sitting down talking to him. Myself and Mr. Dixon spoke for hours about history, and it just blew my mind, a lot of the content that I just didn't know. My godfather, I mean, sitting up under him, it's like, wow, as a matter of fact, the individuals that started this organization that's in this building right now, Mr. Grace, Mr. Bill Grace, and Mr. Dixon. I mean, just sit and talk to those brothers, man. I mean, about just about us, Then you got just in general, there's so many historical figures here in this city that you can just pull in and just talk to. Because, yes, of course, I can see a white teacher saying, I don't feel comfortable teaching this because I don't know. Yeah, as a black teacher, I didn't feel comfortable teaching about things because I didn't know. But you know what I did? I got myself educated. Education defeats ignorance. Education erases ignorance. So go and talk to people. Educate yourself. Because there are so many materials out there that are effective. Now, I know I'm getting close on time, but I want to tell you all something that's pretty critical. How many of you all like wrestling? Okay, hands are going up. Vince McMahon is one of the pioneers and one of the earth movers and shakers of wrestling. He's also a Trump supporter, as well as his wife, Linda McMahon. Linda McMahon is... Oh. I dropped my box. Linda McMahon is the wife of Vince, and she was originally given the position of Small Business Administration from 2017 to 2019, up under Trump's first administration. Now she is the sit down for this, the Secretary of Education. Now, for all you women that voted for Trump, I want you to hear what Donald Trump said about Linda McMahon taking this position. Now, keep in mind, Vince McMahon and Trump are buddies. Donald Trump said, and I'm going to try to find the exact quote if my phone works with me. He says, "I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job." This is what Trump told reporters last week. "I want her to put herself out of a job." The reason is because Donald Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education. For him to say that about a woman in this position, that's cold-blooded. I'm giving you this job to put yourself out of a job. Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump was not the first president that wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. But first of all, he can't really get rid of it because Congress is the one that put the Department of Education together. Congress got to vote on that. And of course, you're going to say, well, Tyrone, Congress, they are red. Yes, they are. They are Republicans as well, too. But we'll see how this goes. Now, real quick, if the Department of Education is abolished, this is what's going to happen. The funding for K through 12 schools is going to be gone. Title I is going to be gone. And, let's go back. There was a guy I was working with. He said, man, the next school I work in, I don't want it to be a Title I school. Title I schools primarily fund schools of students of color and poverty. And when I say students of color, primarily black students. So this teacher says this in a classroom full of little black kids. Ooh. Funding for both of these programs, Title I and the IDEA program, $28 billion a year. It's significant. That's a very, very significant dollar amount, but it only amounts to about 10% of funding that is actually used. Let's see the next one. 'Cause I got to rush through this, y'all, because my time's almost up. Protecting students from discrimination. Well, DEI is gone. So if the Department of Education is gone, you're going to start seeing all kind of stuff now. How many times have you seen situations of teachers saying racially inappropriate things to students? And they got popped for it. Well, now, may not be no consequences for it. Just like this year, just like as of recent, I heard a gentleman say, I do not want to teach in a Title I school. So right now, all those federal rules that protect the kids, that's gone. Or that will be gone. Administering student loans and grants. For example, Pell Grants. How many of us benefited from Pell Grants? I did. That's going to be gone. I remember them saying that the elite of the elite will be able to go to school now. And that's what it is. And also other student loans too. Or student grants. Student loans and grants. So I say all that to say that education is extremely important for our students. Education is extremely pivotal for our kids. And when I say our kids, I mean our kids. Black parents, it starts at home with your students. Now, I'm not being prejudiced. I'm not being discriminatory. I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking from what I know and from what I've seen. And black students are getting an injustice in the school system across the board. And I'm just thankful that there are organizations like Obsidian's Pen, I'm plugging myself, that is actually seeing those disparities with education, and we're actually going in and we're tutoring kids and filling in these gaps and offering that mentorship. So if you are a parent and you need mentorship for your student or tutoring for your student, please go to Obsidian's Pen on Facebook, Obsidian's like the stone, pen, and you'll see an African mask on a pen on a quill. That's us. Also, I'm going to give you our phone number as well too. Bear with me. Our phone number is 816-490-7019. 816-490-7019. Or you can email us at obsidians.pen@gmail.com. obsidians.pen@gmail.com. and we will get you a tutor. We will get you a mentor for your students. I have about 6 strong ones. We're definitely looking for more. I'm at my time. We got to shut down 5 till, so I got 1 more minute left, and I'm going to go ahead and end it with this. First of all, it feels good to be back in the Inkwell. I will not take an absence that long again because I know that there's a reason why I'm in front of this microphone. My voice needs to be heard, and also not just mine. If you feel that you need to come in and say some things, it's open to you. I have all these microphones around. However, I do have a homework assignment for you, especially parents, especially individuals of children of color. It starts at home. Teach your children who they are, whose they are, and where they actually came from. And also let them know where they are and where they can go. Because what's being taught to them is poison. The educational system right now is a junk food diet. We got to give our kids healthier choices in what they're learning. I'm Tyrone Gethers Jr., and this is the Source of the Inkwell. Remember, in the Inkwell, education overflows. And like ink, let it stay permanent. God bless. See you next week.